Hello and welcome to another episode of Analysis on TV360 Nigeria. I am Oyi Adekunle. The Nigerian Bar Association has joined forces with the Judicial Staff Union of Nigeria, JUSUN, to say financial independence for both the judicial and legislative arms of government is non-negotiable. Members of JUSUN crippled activities in courts across the country when the union embarked on an indefinite strike action on April 6 to kick against the non-implementation of Executive Order 10, which was signed by President Muhammadu Buhari in 2020 and grants financial independence to state judiciaries. So basically, President Buhari signed the executive order in May 2020, but state governors simply failed to implement it. Now, lawyers in the country have joined their voices to compel governors to do what they say is best for the country's justice dispensation. And of course, the Nigerian Governors Forum, led by the governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, has said that, or has assured the nation that governors will begin implementation of this by May this year. But joining me now to discuss more on this is Bartolomeo Agwegbodo, the chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association, Ikeja branch. Thank you very much for joining us on the program, Mr. Agwegbodo. Now, let me start by asking you, initially, the NBA had tried to appeal to JUSUN to call off the strike, which it says was ill-timed. So what exactly happened? What made you change your position?
Major stakeholders in the justice sector, particularly the NBA, impressed it on the president and the national ESCO that there will be no better time. If we say the timing is not right, whatever time JUSUN decides to embark on strike, the court sessions will still be obstructed. And the cause of which they are fighting is one that requires total support. And it is best it is done now than later. And the national president of the NBA, being a very listening president, saw reasoning and sense in the position being presented by other stakeholders that there will be need to give backings to the struggle of JUSUN to actualize the financial autonomy of the judiciary, which secures the independence of the judiciary in one hand.
I mean, the NBA in Ikeja, that's the Nigerian Bar Association, lawyers under Ikeja branch, trooped to the National Assembly earlier to protest and to submit a petition letter to the state governor. Now, would you just tell us what exactly was in that petition and what exactly do you want the government, what you want of the government? What was it you presented?
The letter we presented yesterday to the governor through Mr. Deji, the governor's office, is basically presenting the stand of NBA as it relates to the financial autonomy of the judiciary. Let me say something for the records and for clarity purposes. There is a difference between the governors or the government at the state level providing welfare package for the judiciary, in which case we say all that the judiciary requires to function well will be given to them by the executive. That is in compliance with the provision of the Constitution as it relates to financial autonomy. The position of the law is that the amount due to the judicial arm of government from the federation account should be credited to the account of the head of courts for them to manage their own finance and their own projects without having to submit it for approval to the ESCO. The judiciary is an equal arm of government, just like we have the legislature and the executive. So a situation where we have on hand where governors, like we had in Rivers State yesterday, where the governor of Rivers State, His Excellency Wike, was saying that after all he had done for the judiciary has no business going on strike. It's laughable. It is laughable. We're not talking about what the executive had done for the judiciary, which leaves the judiciary at the whims and caprices of the executive. The provision of the law is to the effect that the judiciary, through the heads of court, will run their own finance and their own projects directly charged from the federation account. That has not taken place in any of the states by any of the state governors. The position of the NBA is that the financial autonomy, if fully implemented, will serve the justice delivery better from the judiciary. And that is exactly what we conveyed to the governor through the letter, as directed by the national president.
But let's talk now about some of the effects of this JUSUN strike and how it has affected the country. Would you just help us paint a picture of how bad the situation is, what the strike has caused?
We cannot look at the effect of the strike only from the negative part. We also have to look at it from the positive part, which is what benefit it brings on the long run. I will start from the negative part first. What the strike has caused is that there has been disruption in the administration of justice. People who are granted bail, who have not been able to perfect their bail, cannot do anything. They remain in custody when they already fulfill the bail condition and only waiting for approval. There are matters that require urgent attention by the court through ex parte applications, people whose rights are being infringed. There are many persons who have been arrested for capital offenses, which if judicial strike had not shut the courts, will have had their day in court. There are many trials that ought to have taken place that are still not going on because of the judicial strike. Actually, it creates delay. There is no doubt about that. That is the negative part of it. And that is why it is necessary to enlighten the public about why it is necessary for the judicial strike to affect the full financial autonomy of the judiciary. On the positive side, which is the long run, the judicial strike, if it secures the implementation of the full financial autonomy of the judiciary, the issue of judgments being delivered in our courts being subject to the whims and caprices of the executive, because he who pays the piper dictates the tune. If the executive takes care of the welfare and the financial needs of the judiciary, when the public interest matters against government, the judges will definitely not be strong and bold enough to go against the government because their welfare is tied to the finance of the executive. So the judicial strike on the long run will not only make the judiciary stronger and give effective judgment without fear or favor in line with the oath they took when they were made judicial officers. So if we look at it on that very run, I think the judicial strike on the long run, if it achieves the effect of the full implementation of financial autonomy, will be better for the entire populace.
So as you just rightly pointed out that there's what the law says about how funds meant for the judiciary should be allocated. And then for many years, we've seen this section of the law being flouted. And it's not until now that judiciary workers are sort of waking up and deciding to kick against it. Would you now say that maybe the judiciary has also allowed itself to be used for too long by the executive?
I will not subscribe to that notion that the judiciary has allowed itself to be used for too long by the executive. I remembered very well that when Honorable Justice Akonde was the CJ Lagos State, the issue of the independence of the judiciary and the financial autonomy was on the front burner. And I think to a greater extent at that point in time, that was when the law on the implementation of the financial autonomy of the judiciary for Lagos State was passed. We have to face the reality of time, where the executive decides who become the CJ. When the Judicial Service Commission makes a recommendation to the executive governor, who has the right to determine who becomes the CJ is left at the whims and caprices of the executive. So every chief executive of the state who is confirming the appointment of a CJ on recommendation, where there are 3 names set, looks for a person who probably will be subservient or who will be working in line with him or probably rubber stamp all that. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. If I affect your appointment as the CJ, naturally, the tendency is that you may not come open to actually challenge some of the actions. And that is why yesterday when I was granting the interview to one of the media houses, I did make a comment on the financial autonomy granted the judiciary in Lagos State. That we are not in doubt that the terms of service of the judiciary in Lagos is better than whatever operates in other parts of the country. We are also not in doubt that the welfare package for them and the infrastructural development in our courts in Lagos is way above what obtains in other states. But that still does not meet with the requirement of the law that requires that the account due the judiciary be charged directly from the provisional account into the account of head of court. Except we're getting it wrong, where the CJ is saying that Lagos has implemented the 100% full financial autonomy of the judiciary. But I do not think, with due respect, that the position in Lagos is as such that the account of the judiciary is charged directly from the federation account. What the judicial strike seems to achieve, in part, is that the judiciary will no longer tie to the apron of the executive. but to run as an equal arm of government with the executive. I think no man takes better of another man than the man himself. So if the fund of the judiciary is created directly to the account of the head of courts, as provided by the Constitution, it now leaves a better welfare package and a better infrastructure package. The judiciary knows exactly what their needs and what their wants are, and the head of court, in conjunction with his management team, will be able to administer the money better. That is the essence of the strike.
Well, Mr. Agwebodo, please, we'll just take a very short break here. We'll go on a short break here. When we return, we'll continue, and this time we'll be talking about what the governor's response to the strike by judiciary workers. We'll take a short break here, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Cut. All right. What's your name again? Kemi?
Yes, sir.
Good. Are you ready for us for next week?
Yes, sir.
Next.
Do, sir. Do.
What? Look, what we need here is one who can speak fluent English. Give her a chance.
I need a angel to hold me. Hold me, my beautiful angel.
Cut! It is Angel, not Angel. Please, I'm done with you. Excuse us. Kemi was far better.
It's not about our rendition. It's not about our performance here. By the time she and her friends join us in our hotel rooms, you will know how far.
Can I have her phone?
She has a robust profile.
Real robust profile. I do not undercut professional ethics. It is an act of corruption. Not in my country.
Corruption not in my country. Stop corruption now.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On Digi 360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians have said in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, and use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
Digi 360, dissecting the issues.
Welcome back to Analysis, and we've been talking about the strike embarked upon by the Judicial Staff Union of Nigeria, JUSUN, to protest the non-implementation of financial autonomy for the judiciary in the country, and of course the support it has garnered from the Nigerian Bar Association. And I still have with me on the program Mr. Bartholomew Agwebodo, who is the chairman of NBA Ikeja branch. Thank you very much, Mr. Agwebodo, for staying with us on the program. Now let's talk about the position of governors now. The Nigerian Governors Forum now, specifically it was the governor of Plateau State that said, look, governors are not against financial autonomy for the judiciary and legislature. But what they have issues with is the executive order that was signed by the president. Basically, they are saying that the federal government need not force the state governors now to implement financial autonomy for the executive, for the judiciary and legislature. What exactly do you make of that position?
The position of the Governors Forum that they are against the executive order is a bit puzzling. The provision for financial autonomy is a constitutional provision. The executive order number 10 signed by the president last year is a surplusage. In advanced climes in the Western world, the non-implementation of financial autonomy of the judiciary is an impeachable offense, which ordinarily, if we have an independent legislature, is a sufficient ground to impeach a governor. It does not require the executive order or the president. What the judicial strike is all about is that the governors are in breach of a constitutional provision that says the judicial arm of government is not an appendage of the Ministry of Justice, that the judicial arm of government is an equal arm of government like the legislature and the executive. And as such, if, for instance, ₦1 million is to be sent from the federation account to the state, there should be a particular percentage, an agreed percentage of that very sum that goes into the judiciary account through the heads of courts, that goes into the legislature account through the head of the legislature, and the one that goes to the state coffers. But what we have today is that the executive receives the bulk amount meant for the state and begin to do disbursement of such fund. Now, that is not in compliance with the provision of the Constitution. The Constitution is very, very clear on that. So no matter how well intended the executive is in taking care of the judiciary, you cannot take care of a man more than a man can take care of himself. What we are basically asking, and that is the position of the MBA, is that there be the financial, if the implementation is not just the granting of the financial autonomy, is the implementation of that very financial autonomy granted the judiciary, which the bedrock of it will be that they receive their own fund directly from the federation account, rather than, I think one of the spokesperson of the Governors Forum was talking about the possibility of having a monthly payment to the judiciary. And the question that calls to mind is, that will be taking us to the old, where the executive determines what goes to the judiciary. The strike is all about the judiciary is an equal arm of government with the executive, headed by the chief judge of the state. Let the fund due the judiciary be credited directly from the federation account to the accounts of head of court, and let the judicial arm take care of whatever their peculiar problems are, rather than subjecting it to the whims and caprices of the executive. So my reaction, or my comments on the reaction of the Governors Forum, just like the other comments that has to do that the implementation will take place from May. I see that comment that implementation will take place from May this year as the same old politician tactics to call off the strike once the strike is called off, because there is
exactly, because I was just going to ask you that now that the governors have said that it will be implemented latest May, you mean should the judiciary workers now go ahead and suspend the strike at least?
And that is the point I'm making a comment on now, that if JUSON calls off the strike on the pledge of the governors that implementation will commence in May, we still do not know, agreed that today is already the 20th of April and we'll have just 10 days. In my humble opinion, JUSON should hold on until there is a practical step on ground for the commencement of the full implementation. We are in Nigeria, which has its own peculiarities. Once the strike is called off without something concrete on ground, we'll return back to the old norms of business as usual. And calling JUSON to return back and gain the momentum the strike has gained so far will be an exercise in futility. So if the governors are making a commitment that, oh, today is the 20th of April, and by 1st of May, the implementation will take full effect, let there be concrete and practical steps on ground to confirm that there are instructions, there are guidelines for the full implementation come 1st of May. If that is not achieved and JUSON calls off the strike, JUSON will have wasted the last 2 weeks crying wolf, because once the strike is called off, it returns back to business as usual.
Well, we just wait to see how this goes, and if truly the governors will be committed to the pledge that they have made. Mr. Bartholomew Agwegwodo, the chairman, NBA Ikeja branch, we thank you very much for joining us on Analysis this week. Thank you so much for your time. Well, with that, we'll call it a wrap on this episode of the program. We thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time. I am Oyin Adekunle. Bye for now.